Welcome.
The Pathology Innovation Collaborative Community is a regulatory science initiative that aims to facilitate innovations in pathology, as well as advance safety and effectiveness evaluation. The PIcc Collaborative Community aims to harmonize approaches to speed delivery to patients through collaboration in the pre-competitive space. The PICC is open to all stakeholders, public or private, including but not limited to academia, industry, healthcare providers, patients, and advocacy groups. Meetings of this kind are an example of lawful activity under federal antitrust law because the focus of the meeting is on government action or policy, including the industry's responses or positions taken with respect thereto. However, antitrust monitoring is needed for companies' own protection, since they are direct competitors meeting together. These meetings need to stay within protected subject matters and need to be monitored so that they do not stray off into inappropriate areas, such as pricing and price terms, sales and service territories for particular products, customers and customer territories, each company's individual decisions regarding selection of suppliers or customers, marketing plans and especially future marketing plans or new product offerings, other proprietary or competitively sensitive information. Today's meeting will follow the written agenda, and there will be no discussion of pricing or other prohibited topics. If the discussion veers into those topics, we will terminate the discussion. If you have any questions or concerns about the propriety of a discussion, please raise it immediately, and we will take a break to determine how best to proceed. The Medical Device Innovation Consortium acts as the formal convener, and we will follow their conflict of interest policy. For additional information, we defer to our Code of Conduct and our website, www.pathologyinnovationcc.org. We look forward to moving the field forward.
Can I get some thumbs up?
Yes, it is.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so quite some interesting updates. The first part was the so-called town hall, in this case, the Collaborative Community Summer Town Hall, hosted yesterday by Brittany Caldwell and Christina Weber. And I wanted to share a few things that happened during that meeting. First, you see there were a lot of participants. They fluctuated between 150 and close to 200. But there's a few slides or screenshots that I took. I think the recording is also available on the website, not yet, but it will be. So keep in mind, collaborative communities, I think there's currently 13, and they tackle very, very different things. So this was kind of the overarching theme. And the three things that I wanted to briefly mention is this overview. So there's a division of partnerships and innovation within the agency. You know, we spoke previously about the Medical Device Development Tool Program, which is very important to facilitate a review of device submissions. That is actually part of that division. And within that division is also a subgroup or subdivision called external partnerships. And within the external partnerships, there's one thing, the network of experts, where, you know, domain experts can be asked questions. There's public-private partnerships, traineeships. Some of the trainees are on the call, and all the collaborative communities. So within the organization of the agency, that's very important to notice that clearly some of the initiatives that we're pushing forward here are in the parent branch that also includes the Medical Device Development Toolkit. I just wanted to illustrate that. And of course, there are other divisions here that are equally important, but just for this group, just to illustrate that we're interfacing with the Division of Partnerships and Innovation. They had this slide here, which for everyone who's interested in working in the pre-competitive space is summarizing sort of the overarching idea behind it. And again, keep in mind, this is not specific to pathology or to lab medicine. This is across those domains. The last element I wanted to show, and, you know, I squeeze in 4 slides here, is what are the potential collaborative community outcomes? You could also call this, what are outcomes of pre-competitive space initiatives? So white papers, research agendas, templates of frameworks, of course, peer-reviewed publications or best practice recommendations, tool development, so MDDT, hint, hint, and of course, improved relationships. And this was a slide that was shown there, which is a great summary of what you can or cannot accomplish in a collaborative community. Briefly, there were two panels. The first and somewhat longer panel was with 4 different collaborative communities tackling health equity. And you see here the speakers and their liaisons. And then the second part, which was about half the length of the panel 1, was about harnessing the power of AI and ML. And as you know, our official convener is MDIC. And, Paul Summer from the Case for Quality CC collaborative community, shown here from MDIC, joined this panel, as well as Brian Savoy from the AI Global Healthcare Initiative collaborative community. Spoke a lot about quality, and the 3 main points that I wanted to share with this community, so it's on record, is number 1, they asked sort of what is our big motivation, and I summarized that digital pathology and that data is missing currently from the electronic medical record. It has been referred to as the last missing image element from the electronic medical record. And then second, what we organize and how we organize and what we currently do, and meetings, everything is on the website. As you know, this meeting here is recorded. And then we discussed a little bit that, of course, machine learning and AI is very interesting, but the importance of regulatory grade data, as well as quality of a real good ground truth, is instrumental. I think Brandon was also on the call. I don't know if he's on the call here. I don't know, Brandon, if you want to say a few things about this meeting, the town hall, and what that means for from within the agency and for the other groups there.
So the focus being in your panel on AI and ML, I think I was pretty pleased at how you brought that third main point to the discussion and how it was really resonated with other speakers as well. Although I think you really focused the point on that's what we're focusing on. The other folks emphasize how important it is, but I think you emphasize that we're actively trying to create the pathways to create the protocols for collecting data and ground truth. And I know you didn't mention it, well, you did mention FNIH explicitly, and I really think that collaborative project, if it gets off the ground, will really support this community in everybody getting on the same page and what best practices can be done with collecting data. Because any discussion of AI ML, it's all about the data. All the tools are so ubiquitous and democratized, if you will. And it now really depends on data.
Mm-hmm.
And the reference standard. So appreciate that. I don't think I have much with that.
Other questions from anyone? So before we move to other FDA updates, I wanted to bring up a very sensitive topic. And I put this under the big group or umbrella of DC updates. And of course, the one topic that is on everyone's mind and radar is, of course, the revision of the regulation around laboratory developed tests, or LDTs for short. And this is, the new enforcement discretion policy. There will be a policy that just came out yesterday in more detail. But I wanted to bring up something, and I will try to stay exactly on point in this very, very difficult balancing act here. As many of you have seen, shortly after, I think, our last steering committee meeting, a lawsuit, a so-called complaint, was filed against this FDA final rule. And among some of the people or some of the organizations that submitted that is HealthTrack RX and ACLA. And some of the people who are part of this are part of the PIcc community. and I'm solely representing or presenting this as a quick summary because this is a 450-page complaint document, very complicated, and I wanted to give a very brief overview because from the content, and I mean not the position portrayed, but from the facts and portrayal of both sides, it is an excellent summary. So quickly, the complaint on the right, you see part of the index. There's a 60-page, roughly speaking, complaint section, followed by about 100 pages of exhibits. And these are labeled A through G. And I refer to those who are interested in that. Here are the A, B, C, D, E, F, G starting pages, because that is somewhat hard to find. And for example, Exhibit G is a previously presented ACLA letter, which are positions from organizations and experienced individuals, for example, from large national laboratory chains, etc., that take position and provide their opinion, in part in support and in part against, on various aspects. And it's very detailed, and it takes their stance. Exhibit H is the final rule itself, basically as a copy, and then comes a part. So the final rule, as you know, was also multiple hundred pages. And then comes two things that I believe might be of interest to those who are tackling this. In the additional information, page 434 and 444 are the number of affected labs. That's an estimation based on publicly available data, and a so-called small entity analysis, meaning what will the rule mean for small entities? And it is in part a financial, in part a volume-based estimate. And then the last page, so page 451, I believe, is the civil cover sheet. So I'm just providing this as an outline. So in case you want to dig through this and want to take a stance whether someone has commented on something from some angle, I think here is that's a resource. And I wanted to share it to illustrate that, especially when it comes to the small entity analysis, which was a concern also raised by the FDA. And here's an analysis with actual concrete data. Quickly, we get back to this part in a minute, and I'm sure that there will be some questions and comments on it. But one other element also in the DC update was that the American College of Radiology followed a call for commenting on AI reimbursement. And in the 9-page letter, and I hope Noor can paste this. So this is an official letter from the American College of Radiology, 9 pages, very, very precisely and eloquently worded, addressing the bipartisan House task force on AI. We presented last month the exact 8 meeting sections that they had. And this is a point-by-point response to a call for that healthcare revenue and reimbursement impact on AI. In radiology, the terms used for interpretative and managerial or non-interpretative AI are those two words, interpretative and non-interpretative. In pathology, it's probably more test-based and then more procedural and service-based. But I just wanted to point this out. And two other things that were addressed in this letter. That's why at first glance, this might not fit with the prior topic here, but the American College of Radiology is basically commenting on expanded FDA authority beyond medical devices in various ways, as well as that they create or ask for a creation of an incentive for policy changes to promote widespread clinical use indirectly through reimbursement, etc. So this is a topic on how to integrate data, how to use it for AI, and how to make it financially sustainable. And in case you're wondering how that progresses in pathology, we're still a few years behind radiology, and this letter is definitely a recommendation coming from a large group of people, and it's very well worded. So in case you're interested in this sector on regulation and or policy implications, please take a look. One other thing, and then I switch. I just noticed this slide should be here, to some announcement from the FDA. First, this came out just earlier today. CDRH, including our federal liaison, is Brandon Gallis, our executive sponsor from within the agency is Ed Majerson from OSIL. And him and Jeff Shuren both were quoted and cited in this article that there is a collaboration with CDRH and with Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And please take a look at the header to develop new methods to accelerate diagnostic device development for underserved populations. There's a comment on that later on as well, but that was just an announcement. In terms of recap of some of the policies and elements from the FDA, there was an REI, the Regulatory Education for Industry workshop. That was a 2-day workshop, and it was hybrid at the end of last month after our meeting. You see here some elements, and I just wanted to point out that there are many different tracks, CEDAR, CDRH, and cyber, and all these elements are available on the website. In case you're not too familiar with what these acronyms mean, here's a quick pointer with the link. In case you stumble over some FDA acronyms that are defined, you can find it here. And if not, you can suggest a new entry, which I thought is a very useful little tool, especially when reading through guidance document. And sometimes those abbreviations are just assumed. And I thought that's something helpful. And when I stumbled over these abbreviations here, I thought that might be fitting. The next element is, and this is happening or was happening today as well as tomorrow, is a co-sponsored public workshop on patient-generated health data in medical device development. So in case you're thinking or working on that, again, there's webcasts on this as well as another full day, 11 to 3 tomorrow happening. This was the REDI workshop here. And then 2 or 3 other things that have been announced. One is an AI program, research on AI ML-based medical devices. This was released early in June, and it's, again, coming from CDRH, and a lot of additional information is available. And one element under this parent umbrella of AI ML-based medical devices is, interestingly, Brandon just pointed it out, addressing the limitations of medical data in AI. So that's a specific subgroup. And when you look, for example, there's realism, using actual physics simulations, there's generative data, synthetic data, all of this has been cataloged and categorized. For example, what do you need to do to allow for certain labeled examples of synthetic data, etc. One other thing, and then we come to something very, very impactful. This is a quick pointer. You see here, Troy Tasbas is smiling at us here in this beautiful overview of the total AI product lifecycle. And this is sort of a promise parent page for the pages that I just presented with more specific documents, cross-referencing, again, this interdivisional working together paper that was presented, I think, 2 months ago by this group. Probably the most practically relevant is this guidance document that came out, I think, yesterday. And this is, again, coming back to the LDT issue, a so-called small entity compliance guide. So if you wondered what are the guidances that come out to actually tell us what needs to be done and when, this is the guidance document. I think Noor has pasted in the chat. If you haven't seen it, please take a look. It's not very long, but it's very dense, and it makes something very important, very specific and concrete. You see there's different terms. As you know, there's a phased rollout, including medical device reporting, registration listing, device labeling requirements, investigational reuse, etc. So the key elements that are specified in here, and I labeled this sort of like content. So one is, for example, LDTs that are approved by New York State. And you see here, for example, that some statements here, FDA is aware that some laboratories may offer different versions of an LDT depending on this. So this is getting very, very concrete about, certain components. And I wanted to point out two other things, content two, which is the definition for LDTs for unmet needs. So this is cross-referencing CFR. And these are very specific elements. One component here that I also want to point out is if you take an IVD and you modify it, and you see here, these are the modifications, individual or in aggregate, and that may change, for example, the indication of use or some other operating principle. It specifies in here what you need to do, for example, submit it or not, etc. Now, the most interesting part is a series of tables that follows the following format. So the stages are that phased rollout till 2028. And you see here's the specific timelines. The compliance expectations have been previously cast in this fairly superficial step. And then the timeline, of course, is the time. The tables themselves, when you look into that guidance document, specify, however, also categories of IVDs. Since this table traverses over a total of 4 pages, we went and combined that into a handy dandy little table, which looks very complicated at first, but I take you through this really quickly. So according to this small entity rule, there are 13 types of in vitro diagnostic devices. And of course, that is in part what was previously known as LDTs, etc. So you see, this also includes, for example, 1976 type LDTs section, VB1 of the preamble, etc. But these are basically all the tests, including forensic tests, etc. Now, those phases that I mentioned before are now here presented as stages. So stage 1, 2, 3, and 4 and 5 is combined because there's really only one difference between stage 4 and 5. And I put on top here, this is medical device reporting, this is registration listing and, investigational use changes, quality management system implication, and then pre-market review fully engaged. So this would be the final stage. And then this follows, roughly speaking, a traffic light logic. So nothing is forbidden, but certain compliance requirements are generally expected beginning at this date. And you see that for certain tests, these are generally not recommended. I left that in green so we can go and move on without any of those rules applicable to these IVDs. And then the others are expected to be completed or compliant by those dates. So I presume there will be a lot more discussions here around this. And one element, and I want to stop here and pause. So this is the guidance document. I think Noor pasted in the chat, so please take a look. The two things that I wanted to propose to this group is whether we want to have a session to go through this in a little more detail than just quickly providing an overview, and or developing a few example use cases that we could do, among some of us just as experts, and then say what would happen if we, for example, change a monitor or change the slide or the staining, to discuss that within the group, and then probably put together a few questions or suggestions or interpretations that we can share, of course, with the community. I stopped there. There was already a lot, and there's, of course, more slides, but let's leave it at this regarding this, I think, very important document. Comments, suggestions, questions? No?
Yeah, thanks, Joe. This is great. I think if everyone else is like me, I'm trying to drink from your fire hose here. The amount of information, both from you and from the FDA, is A, fabulous, and B, overwhelming. A being you, B being FDA. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. I think one of the key issues is, of course, how do you take this and translate it so it becomes understandable for the average pathologist? And, that takes, of course, time, cross-referencing between all these different rules and CFR sections. And therefore I thought maybe, getting together, discussing it, and potentially, we might actually identify some questions that may not be immediately addressed in this document, and then we could use existing pathways like the queue submission pathway to ask or officially share those questions or discuss the questions with the FDA. That would probably give us a little more oomph behind those efforts. But I know we discussed this among a few members, but I think they might not be on the call. Other comments? Yeah, thanks. I saw a message here. Yes, this will of course all be shared on the website. Two other quick pointers here. One guidance document from the end of May is related more to drug development. However, one of the interesting things why I wanted to point this out as we talk about digital pathology platforms or platforms in general for AI is that in the drug development sector, there is definitely what a platform technology designation looks like. Now, again, keep in mind, this comes from the drug world, not the device world, but it's definitely interesting to see how these concepts are being developed. So, for example, in that drug world, the platform applies when the sponsor can demonstrate one of these three definitions. I just thought I share this quickly because it's always good to have a regulatory precedent on the other side, as they call it. And since we always talk about platforms or platform technologies, that might be helpful to just take a look. Two quick updates on two important projects. The first is, or I should say was, the regulatory landscape survey, which was live since use cap, so mid-March. So this was open for about 2.5, 3 months. And we got a total of 54 responses. And we cataloged this. You see here in the background some of the pie charts. We need to update that. And I will work with Noor on getting it on the website soon. I must admit that some of the responses were pretty drastic and very on point or sharp or aggressive, however you want to word this. You will see as soon as the results are out on the website. I just wanted to share this, that there was definitely a lot of interest in, additional regulatory clarity, examples, etc. So some of the points might resonate with maybe what some of you are thinking. The next part here, I will skip over a few slides because we showed those the last time, is the FNIH or the PIcc FNIH proposal project. I will just quickly point out that we were planning to have a PowerPoint presentation ready to share. I think I saw Althea from FNIH on the call earlier this month. Hello, thank you for joining. I must, however, also explain that while discussing this, and you see some of the people on the panel or some of the people representing the various institutions that make up this project, we're not very happy about some of the recent regulatory changes, and it required a little bit of hand-holding and phone calls, etc. But I think everyone is and remains on the same page. And Althea, I hope I can share a preliminary slide deck with you and, of course, the team very soon. I'm not 100% sure whether we can make it to the July Cancer Steering Committee deadline. I think that's passed because I know you said you wanted that a week or two before. Can I just ask you when the next Cancer Steering Committee is, or whether we can also submit the slide deck off cycle, so to speak?
Sure. So the next steering committee meeting will be October 29th. So it is quite some time. If you want to submit that with the proposal in a couple in the near term, just so we have some time to review it before we go before the CSC. I think that will be fine. One thing that has developed, and I can talk to you more about this offline, is we currently have 5 projects that are in similar stages of development. And we're basically going to need to do a prioritization to, figure out the timing of when things can move forward. So actually that might be better suited for a more abbreviated review. And we're kind of trying to figure out what that looks like. And I'm happy to share more details on that as it comes. But maybe the silver lining there is that an abbreviated sort of overview of the project may be more appropriate at this stage than a full-on project review. So maybe that's more aligned with both of our needs. Would that be fair?
Absolutely. I think, I indirectly took on the daunting task to talk to everyone about the various aspects, and in large oversimplification, the pilot phase is basically trying to design what we're going to do, while of course for the sponsors trying to be as specific as possible. But that is that strange disbalance between trying to work in the meta level that addresses the regulatory challenges while being very concrete in terms of the content and making sure that it works. So the initial pilot phase would be effectively to join everyone's forces to delineate what we want to do. And that is very meta. And, when you talk to people, hey, would you potentially be interested? They want a fairly concrete suggestion. So I think we can get an abbreviated version to you that might address that first phase. But it's definitely a challenge, and I must admit that some of the people were really not as happy about some of the regulatory implications that they're currently facing with the rule change. So very concretely, one person said, for example, now we have to first document everything that we need to do regarding the final rule. And on top of that, this might be a little bit too much. But I think we have definitely all the right players in place. But I just want to make sure that we have the right support for developing the data collection plan, and then I think maybe we can take it in stages. But definitely we'll provide this very soon.
Okay, perfect. And I'll also follow up with you with more detail on what that sort of prioritization process will look like and what that level of information will need to be. And we can do that offline in the coming days, weeks,
Awesome.
near
Yeah,
term.
that's great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Quick pivot. Cybersecurity, a quick pointer to a group that we have worked with a while back when it came during and shortly after the public health emergency. There was a clearly noted and continuing change of the privacy law across the different states in the US. If you just type in state privacy map, you will automatically find that on Google as the first or second hit. And this group, IAPP, the International Association for Privacy Professionals, I want to give a lot of credit to. And if you're interested in privacy or cybersecurity, there's 2 things. One, there's a meeting coming up in November in Brussels. And again, this is an international group. They deal with topics like, international data exchange, GDPR, and heterogeneity. And one interesting document that I definitely wanted to share with this group is a study guide to get a CIPP certification, which is a United States certification rubric to ensure whether you're familiar with the various overlapping privacy rules. And there's, of course, also cybersecurity efforts from MDIC that's partially overlapping. I just wanted to point out meeting, state map, as well as the study guide, which is a very interesting resource. Now, let me hand it over to Noor from MDIC for the updates from MDIC.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Joe, so much for introducing me. So, MDRC has two upcoming events that are happening. One in July 23rd and 24th. It'll be up in Boston, and the agenda is now live for the Excellence in Quality Summit. Has many different paths encompassed in the Quality Summit, but cybersecurity is highlighted as a program on part of the agenda. And then the next event will be in September, I believe, which is the APF, which is MDRC's annual public forum. That is going to be occurring September 10th and 11th of this year in Washington, D.C. The agenda, I think, is being finalized for that one as well, and it'll be live soon. I placed both links for registration into the chat if you're interested in learning more, or if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out, and I'm more than happy to either answer your questions or connect you to the right party that can answer your question. As always, MDRC is here to support in any way possible. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. Back to you, Joe.
Thank you, Noor. One quick update, the DPA, Digital Pathology Association, and their annual conference, Pathology Visions, which happens in Orlando, Florida in November. I know several of you have contributed. We submitted a session proposal. The decision is pending and will be rendered, I think, by end of July. So hopefully by the next meeting of this group, which is end of July 31st to be specific, we will know whether this session was accepted. The final title as submitted was Advancing Regulatory Science in Digital and Computational Pathology, a Collaborative Dialogue. And you see currently the speakers might change slightly, but Jitesh, Noor, and I, or Noor and I, etc., will, depending who can travel, will introduce an overview of what we do just very briefly. We're very lucky. I think that was confirmed, Brandon, right? You might be able to join us for this discussion or for the Path Visions meeting. Is that correct?
If it happens, I do think I'm gonna make it.
Perfect. And then we have an industry representative. I think at this point, I think Keith Wharton has volunteered, but we can also accommodate one or two others. And then a lab director, in this case, Alexandra Kaloff from UVM. And we wanted to, this is the panel discussion as well as a few talking points to make it interactive and allow, questions and answers from various groups. So just wanted to mention to the group that we proposed this and that it's submitted. And if you're going to the meeting and you're interested in joining the panel, please quickly send Noor a message. We can put you on there because there was still some uncertainty who of the speakers can make it or not. The next item, I would love to hand it over to Bob Tessier from the panel of National Pathology Leaders, PNPL. Bob, how are you?
I'm fine. How are you today?
Wonderful.
Good, good. So I just wanted to bring everybody up to speed on a few things that are going on relative to what we're doing in terms of PNPL. And more important, just to put some connections to it, I was on a great webinar yesterday with John Groth talking about ergonomics in pathology. And what I was very impressed with is the first speaker was Elizabeth Krupinski, who's the vice chair for research at Emory, and was doing an excellent job talking about the implications of ergonomics at Emory and how effective they are. And it sort of reminded me of a conversation with Peter Willett from University of Michigan. And he was telling us that during his evolution to go to digital pathology, he took advantage of the radiologists there. And he said it was an absolutely extremely good experience and getting their insights and their history and how they felt about things. And I just feel very strongly that pathology practices or pathology departments who aren't appreciative of the history that's gone on with radiologists have maybe missed a significant opportunity. And that people I have spoken to have said, gee, we really feel very strongly that by sharing with our colleagues in radiology, we're going to learn an awful lot of opportunities and things that are important and share some information, which also gets back to one of the big missions of PNPL, which is integrative diagnostics. So we're very much committed to the fact that we want to discuss how radiologists and pathologists can work more closely together And as a result of that, Dr. Mike LaPosada at UTMB Galveston has got this new operation going, the John Seeley Diagnostic Center. And John Seeley Diagnostic Center has been in place for about a year. It's going into a 3-year funding program. They were able to obtain about $9 million in funding from the Seeley Smith Foundation there. And we have introduced him to an individual who's coming there at the beginning of July, talking about how to bring other family foundations into the picture, because I think a lot of people who've been in the world of radiology and the world of pathology kind of understand that this may be an excellent way to go. Again, I point out that Newman Toker from Johns Hopkins had talked about the fact that 795,000 deaths and permanent disabilities a year are caused by medical error, and that this obviously comes by way of things that radiologists and pathologists can work on more effectively together. So there's a lot of rumblings and a lot of activity going on at UTMB, and I'm hoping that our diagnostic medicine group, which consists of folks representing University of Pennsylvania and Emory and a number of other places, are going to get together and sort of start to strike a significant chord in that community and get more information available. So we see a lot of things going on that we hopefully will be able to share with the PIcc group and get some insights on and get some feedback on. So PNPL is all about, research and getting information. We talked last time I presented about the concept of looking at the cost per slide and trying to figure out the number of slides per case, and information is going to be presented to the CAP Economic Affairs Committee. And I was talking yesterday to the new vice chair of the Digital Pathology Association Reimbursement Committee Task Force. And I said, there's so many groups that are dealing with the concept of digital pathology and justifications for digital pathology, that any kind of concrete information on what the costs are and how to bring that information to the attention of CMS will be well received. And the question really becomes, does this come from the CMS, or should it come from the CAP's Economic Affairs Committee, or should it come from a collaboration of all groups interested in dealing with the nature of some of these costs and sharing information? So I think the most important thing that he and I discussed yesterday was the fact that sharing the information and getting engaged would be important. I told him that I offered some advice from some of my consulting experience over the years to provide this to the Digital Pathology Association. He said to me, "Oh, I'm the vice chairman of the committee. I didn't realize you would even made that offer." And he said, "Maybe we'd like to get you engaged with this." So I said, "Gee, there's not only myself, but a lot of other people who have a lot of experience and insights, and we really need to get together and just open ourselves up and not feel that anybody is on first base or anybody's on third. You all work together on this, because the whole concept of getting good reimbursement with digital pathology codes to develop the ROI, and then also clearly working through the concept of the AI situation, AI reimbursement. And as you mentioned, Joe, the concept of the American College of Radiology making their very, very clear statement. I've been researching the last week saying, well, who's doing the same thing for the world of pathology? I sent a copy of it to Raj Dash, who's the chair of the AI committee. And I said, gee, Raj, we really have to look at this very closely and see, can we collaborate between radiology and pathology? And then one final comment that I'd like to make would be that today on the Live with Bob, which is a RBMA 2,200 member organization, we were all introduced to Linda Wilgus, who's going to be the new co-executive director of the RBMA. And Linda was very much keen about saying, whatever we can do in radiology, we'd like to share with our colleagues in pathology. And we hope to be able to open up more of a discussion going forward, both in terms of AI. And then Linda and I are talking also about value-based reimbursement. And my conclusion from the standpoint of my experience with pathology is value-based reimbursement is not something that's being effectively taken care of, both in radiology as well as pathology. And Linda's suggestion was potentially within the concept of integrated diagnostics, maybe there's an opportunity for coming up with an interesting approach to value-based reimbursement. And I think we certainly would love to reach out to the PIcc group and find out who's interested in this particular topic, and is it something within your purview, and we'd love to be able to engage with that. So I think that's my shtick for today.
Wow, that was a tour de force across multiple dimensions that we care about. Let's open it up for questions or comments on this. So maybe I can make two comments regarding the integrated diagnostics. That's definitely a thing. Last month we presented the National Academy of Sciences had a dedicated session co-organized by two colleagues from New York. And it's published right now as I think a National Academy of Sciences booklet covering most of the topics that you mentioned, but not from a practical, but more from a conceptual perspective. The meeting is already like a year ago. The other point is, of course, that many of the people you mentioned are either part and or indirectly part of PIcc or the member organization. So would definitely be interesting to include that, for example, in a webinar. And the other point I just wanted to make, the slides that I quickly flashed before you that Bob generously provided is, of course, available. And I hope Noor shared that. I have one slide about your point about value-based care in a second, so I can share that momentarily. So let me continue going forward. One point about circulating tumor DNA, there was a paper submitted, which was a very interesting study. So this is a non-randomized clinical trial where patients were, based on circulating tumor DNA, taken off and put back on drug as implied by some of the biology. And the interesting thing is on the bottom here, you see group A, B, and C. A is the group that had no indicator for treatment, B had indicator, and C had image-based indicators of disease. So this is basically the group with molecular findings. So it is effectively like expected. Let me just see. Noor, can you help mute some of the people that, unless they have a comment, of course.
Sure.
The next topic are two quick pointers in a DEI initiative. One element is an interesting academic or educational paper in Issues, Science and Technology, where they mentioned that schools can collaborate among one another to overcome some of the top-down directives. And very controversial approach, but I think it matches our community because, if we collaborate, we can definitely accomplish more than if we not. And this is, of course, much better worded than I can give it credit. This is the paper that came out, and Bob, I wanted to point that regarding the value-based care paradigms. And of course, CMS has an innovation center, and this was an update from them regarding especially how to marry the value-based care paradigms with health equity vectors or demands. So definitely worth taking a look at. I think I saw Brittany earlier here from our Friends of Cancer Research. They have published a paper on this topic, so it's perfectly fitting to the last theme, which is a racial and ethnic population and underrepresentation in pre-market clinical trials. And you see here's, I think this is the non-typeset version, but I think it's accepted. I don't know, Brittany, if you want to say a few words. I know there's also other projects going on in the digital pathology field. I don't know if I can blindly call
Yes,
it.
yes. No, we just went through the proofs, and so the prettier version will be coming out soon. It has been accepted, but this specific manuscript is part of our broader work looking at PMRCs that are coming out for approved drugs, and as you alluded to, this is specifically trying to understand factors that may lead FDA in the post-market space to issue a PMR or PMC, and to try to be able to understand then if we can help support policies that would push that to think about these things in the pre-market setting, in light of some of the legislation and policies that are coming out around diversity requirements. And then just as an update for our digital pathology work, which I know I've discussed previously on the call and have many of you in our working group, that's looking at over 1,000 samples that we have whole slide images from Roberto Salgado's group, breast cancer, looking at H&E and HER2 IHC whole slide images. We have 10 different models, AI models that have assessed HER2 on those over 1,000 samples, and we're currently working through the analyses to understand concordance across the different models, as well as looking at pathologists and factors that may be influencing that concordance. So more results to come soon.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Brittany. Great work, and I'm very much looking forward to that. And once the HER2 data or study is published, I'm sure we can probably do a webinar or something. I'm sure you do one, but I think this group would be very interested in it. A few things in terms of resources. CAP has put together a so-called first look in the beginning of June on the LDT final rule. This is also cross-referencing the Executive War College in May that was talking on the topic. And then Dr. Week shared a phenomenal slide deck on a quick summary. So I would say if you work in a department and someone says, what's the final rule about, or what's the final rule all about, this is a great resource to have. Now, unfortunately, Stephen Hart, who's the senior author on this paper that emerged from the PIcc group, the AI ML group that Stephen is leading, he had to drop off early. Unfortunately, he was on a call earlier, and I just wanted to make a brief pointer here. We're planning a webinar specifically just around this paper, co-joined by some of the authors here. And this is really I think, a comprehensive resource in terms of understanding of what computational tools, words, vocabulary are there to really bridge that gap between computational scientists and practicing pathologists. And that was just published in the archives. I think we can share the PDF as well as the link. And I think this is, I don't know, I wouldn't call it a must read, but it really explains what the different terms are and how to handle certain prevent misuse of certain techniques, etc. So unfortunately, I had to drop off the call, but that's hopefully fine. And if you haven't seen, please take a look. A few quick pointers on some of the papers that were submitted, and then I open it up for questions. One is, cancer heterogeneity in kidney cancer, certain states. This is a paper, David Klimstra is the last author on AI to help diagnose, for example, micrometastasis in lymph nodes. This paper here is a deep learning model, how to integrate histopathology and proteogenomics from the PIcc community, an extremely impressive merging. So what I think we're seeing, you will see a few other papers coming up, is that the different modalities, transcriptomics, in this case here proteomics, and histology are being merged. And these data sets are, of course, extremely valuable because you can do more than with only one modality. And it's, I think, a very interesting approach. So big shout out here to the group. This paper, for everyone in the hematopathology sector, this is from the Havelach lab in Germany. They examined bone marrow and peripheral blood smears for myelodysplastic syndrome and illustrate in 200 cytopenic patients the value of an additional bone marrow biopsy, and make the argument that because many patients forego bone marrow examinations, that some of the diagnoses are being missed because they can't be always done in the peripheral blood, etc. The next paper here is I want to show two figures because I think there's some regulatory implications for some of the things we discussed earlier, is the so-called 3-year evolution of Germany's digital therapeutics reimbursement program. And while we're not talking about therapeutics, but we're talking about reimbursement also to the points that Bob had mentioned earlier. In large oversimplification, BfArM is the German acronym for FDA. They came up with an approach where a provisional admission into a so-called a digital health archive is possible. And then these healthcare applications are provisionally admitted and then are later on switched to become permanent. Now, such a provisional approach has not been, to my knowledge, been proposed, but that would be an interesting assumption. And here you see on this graph here, I put it in the center real quick, the total number of these digital health applications that are provisional is ascending as the permanent, of course, is ascending as well. And some are, of course, being discontinued for various reasons, updated versioning, etc. So why I wanted to share this with the group as people think about how to approach therapeutic reimbursement, etc. This provisional strategy has many different aspects. It gives the regulator the option to reject, similarly to, of course, accept, and to provide in-world evidence as well as, real, in this case, prescription evidence, but it would potentially be one strategy to provide a intermediate step before you go to like a full approval and or all the effort. I just wanted to point that out, and this is published in NPJ Digital Medicine. Definitely a study worth looking at. And then, a few more papers that I think are worth sharing. This is in relation to the AI-enabled decision support, many different boxes that are valuable, but given that in pathology, many human-in-the-loop elements are in practice, here are the must criteria that this group defines. And some of these are definitely, human factor principles. So definitely interesting to us in the field of pathology. Just the title gives it away here, the 1 million words pathology report or the challenges of a reproducible message. Definitely a phenomenal read by this international European group. And one of my favorite parts of this is, other than just tackling it like this, is that they visualize the different components of a pathology report. So some of it is information about the service, some is technical specifications, of course, some is patient data, patient-related, clinical assistant level, etc. Legibility, understandability. So I thought it's a great way of putting this. A review article about tissue-agnostic therapies and precision oncology, of course, an ever-evolving field. Just wanted to make it a quick pointer. And then this paper here, which I think many of you probably know intuitively, but this group here, in this case from Leeds, UK, has examined the preference use of the microscope versus digital pathology, for example, by age of the operator. And you see here the trainees versus consultants by age group. You see that is has been largely anticipated, and it may make sense to some. Of course, there's probably a practice bias here, but I just wanted to showcase this, that there's still a large predominance of microscope use for various reasons, but it's at least quantifying some of it. One paper here from a group, first author Ian Cree, who many of you know. He has been giving talks here, and he's been heavily involved with the WHO about counting mitoses and attacking the problem of how different field diameter sizes and thereby high power fields actually matters in terms of how many high power fields you have to count to get to 1 square millimeter as their reference size. And you see, just depending on the field diameter, which sounds just like a 0.01 or so change, it changes actually the number of fields required quite a bit. I think 3 or 4 final quick quotes. If you're interested in how to make effective decisions, this is a Science Advances paper that explains that. So this is literally behavioral science, but I thought it was very important since we make a lot of important decisions. This is a transcriptional profiling of single-cell RNA-seq data from migraine and or other body pain syndromes. So again, multi-omic data sets. And then one final pointer to a paper from the group of Faisal Mahmood. This, I think, came out a day or two ago as a preprint, which is H&E and spatial transcriptomics merging in a HEST1K data set. So that is enabling transcriptomics and H&E analysis. Final pointers. Zoltan Lasik from San Francisco is giving a webinar. You can find him, I think, either you can register here, the slides will be up as well. So this is a webinar on Friday. You can register, and then two other pointers. One, of course, our friends from CAP in October have an event, I think multiple days, I think 3 or so main CAP meeting of October, and then one interesting diagnostic pathology course happening in July, so over the summer in Amsterdam, Netherlands. Final pointer, July 31st is our next meeting. And while we are almost at the top of the hour, if there's a quick comment or note, suggestion, or wish, we may have some time.
Hi, Joe. This is Dan. Great
Dan.
talk as always. Enjoyed watching all that. I learned a lot. I've kind of been watching this final rule stuff come across my feed and mostly reading the headlines. Haven't dug too deep into it yet. And my sense is that this really upends how LDTs will be done going forward and the regulations around them. I just wonder if you have any, if you can forecast or foresee into the future to see what labs will actually do, because they're not medical device companies. How will they respond? Will they stop doing these LDTs, or will they go down the route of building the expertise to develop devices?
So, I mean, in large oversimplification, the medical device reporting will set the tone. I think that will become mandatory. And, the next steps following that, how to register, what tests are in and out will definitely change the landscape. So what we shared today, which came out, I think yesterday, the small entity guidance, what you need to do to be in compliance, I think is fairly doable, and it sounds like the timeline over 3 to 4 years is manageable if it stays with what's written there. Now, of course, the devil is in the details, right? It's very hard to estimate what is in and out in terms of a change. The verbiage is highly complicated. I think many pathologists will not intuitively understand it. So there is definitely some, let's call it explanatory work needed. So we're definitely trying to get people together, and everyone is very busy, and you need time to read through the final rule and these guidance documents. In terms of approaching the FDA with concrete examples, I think I pointed that out, especially in the digital pathology space, that might be very, very helpful. We've done this before in a completely different context with the Valid Act. The community selected 3 example use cases, and then we sat down and discussed just what would that look like with the Valid Act. That might be a similar approach, that we pick, 3 representative issues that people don't know exactly what that would look like, and then really put together what are our questions. And that would make it a little more concrete to potentially use, for example, a Q-sub pathway to talk to the agency and say, what is your position, or what can we do? And then in the overall mantra of this community, we would, of course, share it publicly and not make it secluded behind the confidentiality umbrella of a submission. I don't know if that answers your question, but it's, of course, a very, very complicated topic that I think changed the diagnostic field substantially and on long term.
Thank you for that. It is helpful a bit to know that there's ongoing dialogue, and things will have to be sorted out. One maybe follow-up question regarding AI specifically. My understanding is that a lot of AI currently being used in pathology labs is validated through an LDT type of approach. Take, for example, a Ki-67 quantification, or some other biomarker. So Do you think that that matters at all in the context of this rule, or is it's just part of the same LDT? Like, does it?
So,
Yeah.
so I think you must distinguish digital pathology based versus non-digital pathology based AI. Because
Okay.
if it's from a slide, it's typically image-based AI. The
Mhm.
image-based is part of an IVD, so the device is the whole slide imaging scanner and the pixel pathway that has always been a medical device, and that decision has been made years ago. So for image-based AI, it means you're taking, let's say, something from the pixel pathway and add something to it. And then very, very different rule sets apply than when you, let's say, take numbers from a whatever Chem 7 assay and apply AI, and the intended use matters. So for example, if you use it for decision support or information, it's fundamentally different than rendering a decision. So these frameworks are existing. But I think what you're concretely asking, does it matter? I would say in two ways, yes. First, labs that have AI ML, they will have a different level of expertise in establishing it and working with an AI tool. They know the ins and outs already. They know certain outliers. They probably have established their internal proficiency testing and all the CLIA framework. That is a huge advantage over a laboratory that has zero experience. And I would frame it like that. To many, it is confusing that they were able to use remote pathology or digital pathology solutions during a public health emergency. And now they're basically asked to provide additional documentation. What the documentation looks like is, of course, dependent on the context of use. So any experience, in my perspective, is giving you a huge advantage over another institutional lab or whatever environment where you do not have that. Now, how that helps you with formulating and working with the regulator on providing the adequate documentation, that is still about 2 years away. So registering and submitting the medical device reporting will be the first part. So that is much more of a strategic question rather than a technical question. And again, those are just sort of my personal points on what I think might happen. But it's, of course, devil is in the details.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Okay. Other questions or points? I think we will probably do two things. One is, of course, Stephen Hart's paper on AIML is I think it's a great collection, and I will ask the authors to consider, hosting a mini half-hour webinar to just go through those terms and concepts, and then we can have a Q&A session, just like we did with other webinars. And then this issue, Dan, that you just brought up, it would be probably good to discuss with a few interested people some of the final rule or LDT implications or changed rules around LDTs regarding digital path and what people are interested in knowing. Because, just sitting there waiting for the guidance document to drop will very likely not provide the answers that some people want, because they want it for their setting and for their practical elements. And, selecting some practically relevant settings or use cases or module combinations might be very helpful. And then we can try, there's pathways to get information from or present data to the FDA and ask for information. And I think we should make use of those programs. If I'm not mistaken, the QSIP submission program is also for free. It's, part of what the government offers in terms of a pathway to obtain formal and relevant feedback. Brendan, I don't know if you want to comment on the QSub program. I mean, not the content, that might not be that easy, but the QSub program would be a potential avenue, correct?
I think so. And, all these interactions with the agency are usually one party and the agency. And if PICC or a member of PICC as part of a PICC effort were to develop some Q-sub questions, they could then share the entire interaction if they wanted to. And I think that way learning could be much broader than trial and error or one-off questions with one company at a time. That's my big picture on this.
Sounds great.
Come together
Right.
with the questions that we can answer.
It's just so fun to talk at that meta level, because it means that we might have questions that we might submit, that we might get answers, right?
So you will get answers. I mean, that's the thing, is it's the way to get the current thinking about what belongs in a submission, about how generalizable results are, about how groups can come together on submissions, you know, all of that stuff. You will get official FDA answers. And that's why sharing them as a broader group would be impactful.
I think we should do it, because I mean, what do we have to lose, right? It's like if we select things that the field or whatever the representatives in this community think are relevant, it's better than nothing. So it might be a starting point for a broader discussion. But you know, I mean, Bob has a huge and vast network that he could run some of these settings by or against and see whether that resonates. And you know, crafting a document with 3 settings would be possible. I don't know, Bob, what you think about that, but that might help also to clarify where the field thinks maybe some clarification is needed.
Yeah, the one thing that I would caution is, number one, don't go in there saying, FDA, you need to change this, or you need to create this new pathway, or this new, get rid of this requirement. That's not the way. The thing to ask is, what is the least amount of information we can give to satisfy this requirement? Or how can we leverage CLIA data to satisfy this requirement, so that not actual additional effort except for the submission process could be, you know, what is the path of least resistance to getting these things done?
That's great. All right. We're way over, but that illustrates that we're probably talking about things that people care about, which is great. All right. Let's end it here. Noor, we can work on getting the website update together and then send an email to everyone. And I hope to see you soon, if not at the end of July.
Thank you, Joe.
Bye,
Thanks.
everyone.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
everyone.